Hey, what's going on everyone? Greg here with RC Driver, and I had to back the camera out today because we have a big truck here to show you guys. This is the ARRMA Notorious 6S BLX. It is a very cool truck. It's a stunt truck, and I love this particular machine because it's based on the Outcast. What I heard, this truck was actually supposed to come out a little while after the Outcast, and they waited on the Notorious for just a little bit. Now it's finally out, and like I said, it's kind of the same machine. I think it's a very cool machine. I drove the Outcast, had so much fun with it, and now we're going to do that here with the Notorious 6S BLX. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go give you a quick unboxing. So what I just did want to point out is over here, I'll give you guys a close-up shot in a second. It's got a real steel body on it. What's cool about the real steel body is basically it's painted on both sides. So when you go and start bashing and crashing this thing and rolling it over and stuff, what's going to happen is it's going to scrape the paint off, and it's going to look like a realistic machine where, you know, it got scraped up and bashed and crashed. So that's very cool. This is a fast truck. This truck's going to hit crazy speeds. I mean, it's going to get incredible airtime. It's just going to be so much fun. Really looking forward to it. All right, so off the start, here's the packaging of this machine, and we've got some instructions going on here. We've got the truck itself. What's this over here? Looks like the radio's kind of falling out. And let me just grab all this stuff out of there. Oh, we got some bags of parts. Got to show you guys that stuff. Here's the truck. We got the black version. There's black and there's blue. Okay, I'm gonna sit down here so I can get into this. And it's got this saran wrap on here just so the body doesn't get scratched. You're the one that gets to do the scratching first. All right, let's start off with the radio system. And this is a Tactic radio system, the Tactic TTX 300. Kind of have a feeling with Horizon Hobby taking over ARRMA that we're going to start seeing Spectrum brands start to come into these vehicles sometime in the future. But right now, this is the TTX 300. Pretty good little radio system. It has your basic functions. Dual rate, steering trim, throttle trim, and it's comfortable to hold. You're just going to need 4 AA batteries for it, so keep that in mind. We've got some parts here. It looks like some extra body mounts and pistons and stuff like that. So if you need to do some shock tuning, you could do that. If you need body posts for other applications, maybe you broke one, you got those in there as well. Over here, we've got a bag of tools, and it's a pretty complete little bag of tools for your basic tool set. So we've got the big box wrench with the 17mm nut driver for the wheel. We've got your little box wrench for like M3 nuts and stuff like that, and then a bunch of L Allen wrenches. So that is a pretty complete little setup there. And now we've got a high-speed pinion gear, so that's included in there as well if you want to go fast. Now let's take a quick look at the instruction manual. And as I always say, guys, if this is your first vehicle for some reason, you know, definitely read through the instruction manual. You know, this is a lot of truck if this is your first RC vehicle, so keep that in mind. It may look very cool, but if it is your first RC car, take some time to learn how to drive it before you go full throttle with this machine. All right, so we've got some helpful information and then the instruction manual, and this covers a lot of their different vehicles. So what's pretty neat is because it covers a lot of their vehicles, it means a lot of the parts are interchangeable between vehicles, and that probably means a lot better part support if you're trying to find something out there if you do go and break something. So go through that, and I think I've covered all the accessories that come with this thing. Now we get to look at the truck itself, and again, really excited about this truck. Let me start off with the body because this is the big feature on this truck is this 50s inspired stunt truck, and it's got a very cool matte black finish to it, or you get the matte blue finish to it, and they deem this the real steel body. And as I mentioned before, when you flip this over and start scratching it up, you could see the scratches, you could see the paint layers underneath. So what they do, they paint it on the top, they paint it on the inside, and between all that, it just gives it a really cool effect when you do start bashing and crashing this thing up, giving it a scuffed look and everything like that. So it comes pre-decaled. It's got this roll bar on here, and this is a very solid roll bar. It helps distribute any force to a plate that's underneath here. so the body doesn't kind of crinkle in or anything like that, because people are going to smash the heck out of this thing. And so it's good to see it's got some extra reinforcement. Also like that it's got the little body clip retainers on here, little rubber body clip retainers. And what's also neat is inside here they've got these little decal pads so it doesn't wear away at the paint underneath it. Very cool looking body armor. Definitely like that. Check out that front end on that thing. Like that. And now this thing right here pretty much looks like the ARRMA Outcast. And we do have an ARRMA Outcast video on this channel. I'm not proud of that video. We kind of screwed up on the camera settings of that video. And depending on how you watch it, it could come out very blurry and choppy, or, you know, it looks pretty good. You got to go kind of mess with the settings on there, on the playback. But it was a fun video to make. Unfortunately, it just had the wrong camera settings. So here is my redemption. I get to talk to you guys about this thing again and give you all the details about it, just, you know, under a different name. So let's start off with the front like we always do. And it's got this pretty neat bar bumper up front. I do like the look of the bar bumper. It's got a, you know, a Notorious kind of spelled out in letters there. Name on the license plate, and definitely going to take a lot of hits up front. It's kind of flexible, so it takes those hits. And then right behind it is an aluminum brace plate for the hinge pins. Must have, and that thing is thick. Oh my god, that plate is huge in there. But where my eye goes right to next are the very thick aluminum shock towers on here. I think that's got to be 5 millimeters. I don't know where my calipers are. There's the calipers. So let's just see how thick these shock towers are here. They are, yeah, 5 millimeter thick, and I think that front plate is 5 mil thick too. Yep, so that's 5 millimeters thick. So a lot of beef on this truck. Everything is meant to take a lot of abuse. So the next thing I want to talk about is these large bore shocks, and these are a really neat shock. I mean, you know, they've got a threaded body to them, multiple color, thick shock shaft on there, nice springs, and it's got a really good feel to it. You know, it's pretty stiff because you're going to be landing some hard landings with this thing. So even though it's on the stiff side, it's got a good smooth feel to it, and that's what I really like. Even the pins on the bottom are held in with screws, and there is a little adjustability there if you need to. We've got some protectors on the top of the shocks, just so when that body does crash down, it doesn't hit the top of the shock caps or anything like that. The suspension arms, they have some flex to them, because when this thing's cartwheeling, you don't want those arms to snap. If you had a rigid arm, it's going to snap. So this has some flex to it, so it has some give. When you're rolling, it's not going to break. We've got sway bars on the front and on the rear, help keep this vehicle stable. When you're going through corners, it's not going to roll as much. So, you know, it's got some racing elements in there as well. You see, you know, sway bars on racing cars, and, you know, it's nice to see it here. They could have gone away with it. A lot of basher type of vehicles, they leave the sway bar as an option, but it's stock here. What I also like is the steel drive shafts here. CV style steel drive shafts, huge bearings out here. Got ball bearings throughout the entire kit. We've got some huge pillow balls here for the pillow ball steering, and the steering knuckles have an aluminum plate for the steering arm, for the steering link to attach to. Everywhere you look on this vehicle, it's bulked up, ready to take some hits. All right, so we've got pretty much the front end done. I should also talk about the front gearbox. So we've got an oil-filled differential on the front, obviously all metal gears in there. It's going to need metal gears to handle 6S and all this power, but it's really easy to access the diff in this. Just a couple of screws and you'll be able to pull the diff out from the front. So this truck is also pretty easy to work on as well. All right, so the case itself, pretty bulky. A lot of material of plastic there. Outdrives, of course, are steel. All right, so moving to the front here now. This is where the steering is. Obviously, you know, pretty much every car, the steering cranks are up front. Dual crank steering on this. We've got an aluminum drag link bar in the center and an aluminum front top brace plate. Keep everything nice and sturdy up front. It's got a plastic chassis stiffener going down to the center of the chassis. Same in the rear, we've got a plastic chassis stiffener, but the servo saver is adjustable, and what's really nice is it comes with a metal servo horn from the factory, so you don't have to worry about upgrading that. All right, now that we're moving on to the center some more, let's get into the receiver box. We got a nice compact receiver box in here, easy to access the receiver if you ever need to do anything with it. Over here is the battery tray. Now this is a pretty neat battery tray. It handles all sorts of batteries, you know, down to just using a 3S pack. This truck right here, it's already got a jumper plug on it, so if I just want to run it 3S, I could do that. If I want to go and run it 6S, which is what I'm going to do, I've got these dynamite packs here, two 11.1 volt Lipo batteries, and actually I've got a jumper because these have EC3s on here, and over here we got some XT90s, but I think in the future it's all going to be, or excuse me, EC5s. That's what the larger plug is. So right now I'm going to use adapters for that, but that's the battery setup I'm going to use. Probably just going to go run 6S. That's what you guys want to see. But again, back to here, the versatile battery tray setup allows you to put two 2-cell packs, two 4-cell packs. It's got this little clip in the back here where it goes and holds the balance lead. So pretty neat battery tray. The top front actually rises up. It's on these little posts. So it helps clamp down the front of the batteries because that's where a lot of the force is. And great little battery tray on this. Moving over here, you probably noticed this tower in the center, and that's kind of what I was talking about before. This tower right here prevents the body from collapsing on the center of the truck. It's mounted to the center diff case here, and it's actually pretty easy to pull off if you need to do some maintenance and stuff. There's two body clips and some pins that come out, and this comes off. In the center, we've got steel drive shafts, as you would expect, steel out drives, center differential, oil-filled differential. The motor mount is machined aluminum, a nice red anodized machined motor mount. And accessing the motor is a little tricky to get in there to the screws, but you know what? I don't really see myself messing with this too much. You know, the gearing that is in there is perfect for the stunt driving that ARRMA built this truck for. So I don't really foresee myself messing around with that too much. People that want to do speed runs, if you do want to go and put the optional pinion gear in there, it's a little bit of work. It's a couple of minutes at the workbench, but nothing too bad. Over here, we've got the ARRMA speed controller and just really heavy duty wires on here. Waterproof speed controller. It's the BLX 185, a rubber boot on the switch. It's got little wire guides on here, fan cooled. Just a great speed controller. And the Outcast, when we drove the Outcast, the ARRMA system worked really well in there. Over here, we've got a 2050 kV motor, A scale size motor, and really cool etching on this motor. It really adds to the look of this truck. And, again, just really neat stuff going on. We've got these really tall mud guards on the side. We got these dirt shields in the front, so when you're spraying dirt in off these tires and stuff like that, it's not filling up the chassis. Some will get in there, but it does do a great job with protection. Moving on to the back, kind of some of the stuff that we've seen in the front. So we've got the really thick 5mm shock tower in the rear, those large bore shocks, aluminum caps on there. Adjustable tire rods in the rear. We have pillow balls in the front, and you could adjust the pillow balls to change the camber in the front, but in the rear we've got tie rods and even a couple spots on the shock tower and on the hub actually as well to adjust the camberling position if necessary. These suspension arms in the rear, these have a little bit of flex in them as well, just so they hold up to the abuse. There's actually droop screws in here too if you want to limit the amount of droop in the suspension. So again, a little bit of race tuning sprinkled into this vehicle. Large ball bearings. These are dog bones in the rear, not like CVs, not like the front where there's CVs. The rear doesn't necessarily need CVDs. For a bashing vehicle, that's just totally fine. Large ball bearings supporting that, up to the 17mm hubs. And we've got these really gnarly tires on here. Check these things out. These are the D-Boots backflip tires. Really cool, gnarly looking tread on these. And they've got this wild black rim on here. It looks very cool. I think you guys have seen that rim out there before. But let's see, what else we have? Okay, so out back here we've got this unique wheelie bar spoiler. So there are wheels on the back of this machine so when you are doing wheelies and stunts, this will help keep the truck under control, hopefully. I mean, this thing does get pretty wild. The rear wing mount here takes a lot of abuse, but it seems to be pretty firm, and overall that looks pretty cool. The chassis itself, this is a aluminum chassis, 3mm thick chassis. You can kind of see the aluminum peering out for the hinge pin supports and stuff. And just a great job. We've got little bulges here where the gear diff kind of sits in a low position in here. Everything is kind of got some racing elements to it, but I mean really it comes down to this thing is an awesome basher. It's meant to be a stunt truck. It's meant to go onto skate parks and BMX tracks and stuff like that. you know, go rip around in huge parking lots, do lots of wheelies, flip it over, do whatever you want. This thing was built to handle all of it, and I can't wait to go out and run it. You guys need to see this. Let's go out and drive the ARRMA Notorious. Wow, guys. I don't know where to start with this one, but I gotta tell you, this thing is absolutely amazing. I had so much fun with this truck. I could not get back out quick enough with another set of charge batteries to have fun with this machine. ARRMA did an awesome job with the Notorious. They did that with the Outcast as well, and this is pretty much the same machine, just a different body. And yes, they did it again. This thing is absolutely incredible. I can't wait to tell you about all the fun I had with it. So first off, I went up to Wolcott Hobby, where they kind of have their own little private motocross track just for fun, little jumps and berms and stuff like that. But it was the perfect playground for this machine. Just sand and rocks and jumps and bumps and everything. And this was so much fun, just roosting dirt everywhere I went with it and just launching it off of jumps, just barreling down the straightaways of the small track, just hitting rocks. This thing's flying up in the air, it's pulling wheelies. It was absolutely just amazing to watch. It was such a cool machine, such a cool experience. I really hope that I get across to you guys how much fun I had with it, because it's been a while since I just took something out, didn't really care about it. Usually when I go out and run something, I treat it, with respect and drive it in a way that, the vehicle should be driven in. But with this thing, I just went all out with it, and I didn't care because I knew this thing would take the abuse, and it took a lot of abuse, and it took a lot for me to actually do something to it, which we'll get into a bit later. But let me start off with the steering on this machine. It's got tons of steering. It's got great steering. In fact, I was driving it with one hand because, you guys know that I film with one hand and I drive with the other hand. And I was able to get this thing spun around and just point it in the direction I wanted to with just one hand, with my thumb driving the wheel. And that means, when you've got two hands on this thing, you're going to have plenty of control. It's got great steering to it. Obviously these tires offer a lot of traction, so it'll get you turned and pointed in the direction you need to. Just overall, it's great in the steering department. Now onto handling, it's got a kind of a short wheelbase, so you kind of got to think about that when you're ripping on the trigger, because with the short wheelbase and a lot of power, this thing just goes right to wheelie mode. And so, on any type of surface, this thing is just ripping wheelies, ripping wheelies, ripping wheelies. So, when it starts to hit some of those bumps and stuff like that, it gets a little light feeling, but it actually handles really well. It keeps under control, and it lands pretty much on the wheels all the time. I mean, there was, I flipped it over. It landed on its roof, but a lot of the times this thing would just land back on all four wheels, and I'd keep going. And I was surprised about it. I'm like, oh, I'm going to take a walk. I got to go walk all the way across the field, and this thing would just boom, right back over onto its wheel. So that was very cool. Again, soaks up the bumps. Now on the jumps, I mean, I was airing this thing out, and sometimes it was just going straight up and landing straight down. Sometimes I was launching far. And this thing, the suspension on it is pretty dialed. ARRMA obviously did their homework on this machine, and the suspension is on point here. It does a great job. Launching this truck, as far as jumping goes, it really is throttle dependent, because with just a short run up, this thing could sky big time. And so I was on the motocross track, it was airing out over a lot of the jumps, and I took it to a skate park as well. You guys saw that, and over the ramps and stuff, and in the bowl, I mean, this thing would just launch right out of it, and to the point where one time I launched right out into a tree. It was crazy, and this thing, that's when I had a problem with it. We'll talk about that in a second, but I mean, this thing was way up in the air. This thing flies. If you're looking for airtime, any type of airtime, whether it's straight up or distance, this thing delivers on it. It's that cool, guys. Now, I kind of indicated power. This thing is fast too. I mean, it just gets up and it goes. I was running this on 6S, obviously. That's the way you got to run these things, and it is just an absolute rocket. Total beast. I mean, ARRMA, again, you did a great job with this truck. I love this truck. This is going to be one of my go-to trucks for just having fun. All right, now that I've kind of amped up everything about this truck, got to kind of talk about durability. And I got to tell you guys, I beat this truck up. I really went to town on it, and it took a lot for something to happen to it. And, when I was over at the skate park, that's when things happened. And I kind of expected things to happen there. Everything at the skate park is concrete. Everywhere you turn, concrete. So I was just jumping off of things and just not even caring where it was landing and stuff. and that's when something happened. I launched it off one of the ramps there at the skate park, landed nose down into the ground in concrete, and it bent the front shock tower. That's kind of why the body isn't on. Kind of see the shock towers bent back here a little bit. And you know what? I kept going. I could keep going because it didn't really affect the performance at all. I mean, nothing else is bent, nothing's broken, no broken plastic, anything like that. The shock tower is just bent back a bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to head over to my bench vise and then I'm going to straighten it out. I'm going to keep going because it's really not going to affect anything. It's going to be just fine. I mean, if you want, you go out and get a shock tower. Horizon Hobby has shock towers for this thing. But that's all that happened with that massive hit. And I mean, that hit was hard. Now, the other thing I encountered with it, and again, it was me just going crazy with it. I came out of the bowl at the skate park and pulled full throttle, and this thing launched straight up in the air, and it scared me, and it went into a tree and hit every single branch on the way down, landed upside down, and that's when the rear center dog bone kind of popped out of the joint, out of the outdrive cup, and just kind of hung up there. So what I did was I unscrewed the rear stiffener brace screw, popped the drive shaft back in, screwed the screw back in, and we're good to go again. So massive hits. It took massive hits and it is still good to go. I don't have to go out and spend a dime really to fix this machine. And you know guys, when I do these reviews, I kind of try to leave the decision up to you whether to buy the vehicle. I try to give you all the information I can so you guys can make the decision if this vehicle is right for you. Well, I'm kind of telling you right now, if you've been looking at this vehicle, it is the right vehicle for you. This is a total winner in my book. I love this truck, and this is definitely a truck I'm gonna run often, and I would suggest, you know, if you're into it, you go run it often as well. Go grab one of these things. You're not gonna be disappointed. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed our review. Hope you enjoyed all that action. If you haven't done so yet, please hit the subscribe button, the notifications bell. Throw the video a like, throw it a dislike, question or comment about this truck, throw it in the section below. And of course, when you have some extra time, head over to rcdriver.com.